Egyptologists and scientists, which give us the precise dimensions, exterior dimensions of the Great Pyramid before the cladding fell off. It's a relatively routine on the dimensions that have been well worked out since the end of the 19th century.
And your second question?
My second question concerns the caption underneath a very interesting photograph of the object in the King's Chamber, which is referred to as a sarcophagus.
Yes.
In the information under the caption, you mentioned the speed with which a tubular drill apparently removed this material, very, very hard granite material. I'm wondering how you arrived at that conclusion.
Well, I rely on the work of two men. One, Flinders Petrie, a great Egyptologist at the turn of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, and the other, Christopher Dunn, a machine tool maker who lives just south of Chicago and who has been involved in the machine tool making and specifically drill making business for most of his life, and who, by the way, has a book on the engineering of the Great Pyramid coming out. Now, Chris Dunn's work and Petrie's work both concur that this object, whatever it is, and we shouldn't jump to the conclusion that it's a sarcophagus, that this object was hollowed out using incredibly high-speed drills. Not only this object, but other granite objects in Egypt as well have been found which were cut in this way, and in some cases the drill cores have survived. You get a core with a tubular drill which cuts down into the stone and leaves a central core, which is then knocked out, and another drilling is done, and gradually they hollow the object out. Now, what's interesting from the drill cores is that it's possible to calculate the speed at which the drill was turning. And both Flinders Petrie at the turn of the 19th century and Chris Dunn in the last decade have demonstrated beyond any doubt, beyond any shadow of doubt in my view, that these drills were turning at an uncannily fast rate, in fact as fast or faster than modern power drills. And this becomes just one more of the many enigmas of Giza, which has rather been brushed under the carpet by academics.
So that people understand what it is you're telling them right now, you're talking about a higher speed drill than we have now in the modern day, and this would have been done how long ago?
Well, at least 4,500 years ago, if we accept the orthodox dating for the pyramid, and perhaps long before that. It's a very disturbing and troubling finding, and as I say, it's a finding which really can't be written off as a sort of lunatic fringe speculation, because of the real solidity of the two people separated by almost 100 years who came up with this information. Flinders Petrie in the early 1900s was completely baffled. I mean, this was perhaps one of the most orthodox of all orthodox Egyptologists, and he really believed that he'd demolished most 19th century speculation about the pyramid, but he was baffled by this one issue of the speed of the drills, because the ancient Egyptians in that period, the period of the construction of the Great Pyramid, are really supposed to have only had copper tools. And any fool knows that copper cannot cut into a stone as hard as granite.
Indeed.
No matter how much you temper the copper, you just can't drill granite with it. And if you embed, for example, jewels into the tip of the tubular drill, you then have the question of the pressure that's applied to the drill, and that pressure would collapse any copper tube. So we have a real problem here, which has never been resolved, and which hints very strongly at a lost technology at Giza.
Graham, I had the opportunity while I was there to lie in what is called the sarcophagus. And
Oh, me too. I've done that. It's a great place to be.
Yes, and I noticed there were some very, very, very unusual acoustic properties when one speaks in there, and Boris Said and others have done acoustic work in that chamber and have found some pretty strange things. Do you have any comments on the acoustics of that?
Well, they're extremely powerful. They have an extremely powerful effect on any person uttering sound in that chamber. It's best to be in it alone, really.
Yes, sir.
Or at most with one or two other people who are prepared to keep absolutely silent. But
that was the case, Graham, and I must say I cannot even find words to tell you what I experienced.
Yes, it's a really disturbing sound. It quite shakes you up. And of course, I'm convinced that the entire chamber and the so-called sarcophagus were designed to produce such effects. I've been convinced for a long time that the notion that the Great Pyramid was simply the tomb of some megalomaniac pharaoh is a completely idiotic idea, which unfortunately has been foisted upon us with great success by Egyptologists during most of the last century. I'm sure that the purpose and function of these monuments has been completely misunderstood by Egyptologists, and that they're designed to have an effect on human consciousness, and that they do have that effect, and that they have it in by many different means, one of which is sound.
All right, let's keep moving. A wild card line, you're on the air with Graham Hancock in Great Britain. Where are you, please?
Yes, hi.
Hello, speak up good and loud. Where are you, sir?
I'm Marshall from Vancouver, BC.
Vancouver, British Columbia. Okay, do you have a question?
Yes, I have two.
Fire away.
First question is, hi, Graham.
Hi.
Have you ever read The Keys of Enoch?
Yes, I have read The Keys of Enoch, and I know Jim Hancock.
You do?
It's a very interesting book.
It is very interesting because he makes references to the tunnels in page 73 and page 74 of the tunnels. It makes it
I've always felt that in this respect and in other respects of his analysis of Giza, that James Hancock, by some means which I don't fully understand, managed to be very far ahead of the game back there in the early 70s when he wrote that book.
Yes, it's 73 actually when he published this book.
Yeah, no, it's quite extraordinary. He also highlights the connection with Orion, which really didn't get properly into the public domain until Robert finally put the pieces together, and Robert Bauval, and came up with the Orion correlation theory, which makes sense of all that. Now, Hertak didn't speak of an Orion correlation, but he did speak of a connection between the pyramid and Orion, and he did so way back in 73. So, again, I don't know how he did it, but it's a great achievement.
Right. When did they first start to make extensive excavation or research the tunnels under the pyramid and the Sphinx?
Well, we don't really know how long this has been going on. It's written that since the early 70s, there has been a series of projects which have addressed themselves to this mystery, the mystery of tunnels and chambers under the Sphinx and indeed inside the Great Pyramid. And one of the odd things is the way that virtually every project which has ever got going on this has sooner or later been stopped by the Egyptian authorities. But that may simply be because so many of these projects do actually turn out to have a hidden agenda. It's difficult to say why, but the history of exploration and excavation at Giza over the last 20 plus years has been very peculiar, and it does seem that there has been an ongoing, continuous concern regarding the possibility of tunnels and chambers. And personally, I'm absolutely sure that the whole of the Giza Plateau, what we see above the ground, is matched by an enormous tunnel system under the ground. It stands to reason that anybody who could build up as successfully as the pyramid builders did could also build down. And indeed, they were masters of hewing out of solid rock.
Right.
Most amazing construction.
Right. My drafting 11 teacher told me that the pyramids, from where he stood and understood, could only have been built from the top down.
Well, yeah, I find that difficult to see how that could be. I must say, the issue of putting the cladding on is another matter. I think there's no doubt that the pyramid was built from the base up, as far as the core structure of the pyramid goes, which is the structure that we see today, the 2.5 million gigantic blocks that make up the body of the pyramid. But the issue of the cladding, the covering of the pyramid, which fell off in antiquity, is another matter, and much does suggest that that must have been laid in place from the top down.
Now, while I realize, Graham, that you have a sort of a new communication with Zahi Hawass, I've got to ask about this. When I was in Egypt, I asked Zahi about the allegation that he will invite various institutions and groups to Egypt to do ground-penetrating radar work and all other sorts of work, and then just when they find something, that's the moment that somehow or another they manage to get kicked off the plateau, and a lot of people feel the work then goes on in secret. Now, of course, he said that's asinine and ridiculous. What do you say?
Well, what I say is that if a research group gets a properly authorized excavation and investigation permit, a scientific permit, as opposed to a commercial license.